God's message of love to you from the other women in the Bible.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Other Women in the Bible. Hey, I'm Larry Watlington of GETL Ministries, and I'm glad you're tuning in and you're joining in on these studies we're doing on these other women of the Bible. Okay, today we're going to talk about Lot's daughters. If you go to Genesis chapter 19, that's where we're going to be. That's where we're going to pick this up at. You see, Lot, to give you a little historical setting, Lot was the nephew of Abraham. And when Abraham was told to leave his home and go, he took Lot with him, because Lot's father had passed away. Now, when they got into a certain place, Abraham and Lot, they had grown so much, they'd been blessed so much that the land wasn't big enough to sustain both of all of their cattle and all their crops. So Abraham said, Lot, you take a half, I'll go the other direction, and I'll take the other side. So Lot looked over and he saw the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. He said, I'm going to go that direction. He was pulled away by his own lust, and Abraham kept his side. So Lot ends up in Sodom, and in the city of Sodom. And I know you know this story, but we're going to focus on, though, is Lot's two daughters. Their names are never given in the Bible, but he had two daughters. And these two daughters, because Lot was in this city, they also lived in this sinful city. Now, the thing with Sodom, it was homosexuality. It was rampant, because it says with the men of the city, they had been overtaken by the spirit of homosexuality. And God had sent a couple of angels to Sodom to basically warn the city and to warn Lot that, hey, I'm getting ready to come in here and destroy everything. We're going to burn it. Everything is going to get burned. So these two men, they were angels, they came into the city. And you know what? The men of the city, they wanted to have sexual relations with these two men. Lot did all he could to keep these men from doing this. As a matter of fact, this is what Lot even did. He offered his two daughters to these men, the perverse men of the city. Take my two daughters, but please leave these two men alone. No, we want to know these two men. Pretty bad, isn't it? That here's a father who would offer his two daughters, his two virgin daughters, because they weren't married. But even though they were unmarried, they were engaged to two young men in the city, and who had also become very comfortable in this sinful lifestyle, the perverted city. As a matter of fact, when it was time for them to leave, to go, because the angel was trying to get Saul and his family out, their husbands, no, their spouse husbands, were like, no, we don't want to go. We're staying here. So that tells you they had become very comfortable. So here, these two ladies, these two Lot's daughters, their father offered them up to be basically abused, even though they didn't happen. Their husbands to be, who were engaged to, had become very comfortable. Now, you think that's not bad enough? Let's look at their mother. We all know the story of Lot, that Lot's wife, here again, she's not named. But when they were leaving the city, and the angels told them, don't look back. Go toward the land of the plains, and don't look back. What did Lot's wife do? She looked back, turned into a pillar of salt. We know that. But think about it from this perspective. Here's a woman who had two daughters, but her own lust, her own pride, her own, perversions were so great that she was willing to sacrifice them for the city, for pleasure. So, two daughters who were completely abandoned, not only by their father, by their husbands to be, but also by their very mother. So, what happened? As we know, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were burned. But what happened after that? After the destruction of Sodom, Lot took his two daughters, and they lived in a cave. And while they were in the cave, his two daughters looked at each other and said, you know what? Because in their minds, they thought the whole world had been destroyed. They said, you know what? We don't have anybody to bear children by us. And the only man they saw looking around was who? Their dad. The same guy who says, hey, look, I want you guys to go ahead and take my daughters. So what did they do? They got Lot drunk. Okay, yeah, that's another story. We won't even get into that. That he got Lot drunk. Really, I used to drink a lot, and people just don't get you drunk. You get yourself drunk. But anyway, another story. So they got Lot drunk, and they both slept with their father. Yes, incest. They both slept with their father, and they both became pregnant. They both had offspring. Now, this incestuous relationship brought 2 sons. And remember these names, because if you do any Old Testament studies, you're going to see these names come up. And if you hadn't connected the dots of where they came from. One is Moab, and one is Ben-Ami. So you've probably heard of the Moabites and the Ammonites. Yes. And it's amazing because as you read more in the Old Testament through the book of Kings and so forth, you'll see that these 2 ancestors that were born of Lot were fierce enemies of Israel, always attacking them, always they're having battles with the Moabites and the Ammonites. But you know what? God is still faithful, even in the midst of all of this mess. And if you think your family is messed up, think about this. This is a jacked up family. But even in the midst of all of this mess, God was still and still is faithful. Why? Because he didn't even allow Moses to destroy them, even though they were enemies, because of the seed. How do I know this? Because now when we fast forward, let's go to the book of Ruth. You see, Ruth, we all know Ruth, right? We love Ruth and Boaz. We know that story. And most of us know that Ruth is the great grandmother of who? Yes, King David himself, if you follow the lineage. But who was Ruth? You guessed it. She was a Moabite. So Ruth herself was from the lineage of the incestuous relationship between Lot's daughters and Lot through one of the sons, Moab. So you see, no matter how messed up your family situation might be, don't get caught up into that, because God is greater than your family situations. In the middle of all of that mess, God raised up a king out of it, David. And from David, we know the lineage from David, Jesus, through that same lineage. So even from incest, from living in homosexual environments, to having your father, your mother, the guy you're supposed to be married to forsake you, still God, that when we talk about that scarlet thread of salvation, he used all of that mess. So no matter what you may be dealing with in your family, let it go. God is greater than that. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the church.
Hear God's message of love to you.